think this is now formal. Good evening to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our open source training session on understanding one's own feelings, empathy for the feelings of others, and the regulation of emotion in a way that enhances living. One of my favorite quotes. I guess we're all familiar with this very popular one from or by Daniel Goleman. My name is Sharon for those who don't know me, and I'm super excited to engage our audience for the next hour. Allow me to introduce the lady on the camera at the top, is Shana Jabaar. Shana will be sharing some of her research on how to lead with emotional intelligence in a hybrid world of work. I've had the opportunity to connect with her when we did some discussions for a client, and I could hear her passion, and then realized she's doing this research and thinking how many people have done this. So I thought it would be it would add so much value to our session this evening if we can speak about leading people in the hybrid world of work and what it is that our leaders should be considering when they're doing that. And then also the other face on the camera, there's more than one, but the guy to my left that I can see is our very own Mario Pepino. Thanks, Mario, for waving. He will be joining us in conducting a nice Mentimeter activity that I think that we will enjoy. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to share that I think for me, in terms of an overview of just tonight's session, it is not for us to focus on the definition of emotional intelligence. We're going to reflect a little bit on the 5 key elements thereof, but the aim mainly for us is to discuss and agree on some tips and tricks to develop our own emotional intelligence. So, yeah, so that we may continue to inspire and influence others to do the same. In short, always for me, the definition of emotional intelligence is to be self-aware and to be socially aware. So we'll take some time to reflect on the 5 key elements. As I said, I need to get some time to talk. So I'm going to do quite a bit of talking a little bit later. We're also going to look this evening at some team emotional maturity when it comes to leading your team and building high performance organizations and how that adds value to organizational culture. But my favorite key takeaway is going to be possibly my discussion with Shana. And as I just mentioned, we've gone through so many lifestyle changes over the last 18 months. And I think sometimes we're unaware what our employees are experiencing and what are some of the things that's within their control and what is outside of their control. And I don't know how much time organizations have taken to just survey with their staff to see what it is. We're now at level 1. And we're expecting our staff to come back to work. Some organizations sent an SMS, I believe, and said the next day they should be at work. So the other thing just about lifestyle changes for leaders, do they know how to lead in the hybrid world? So Shana's done a research on that. I'm, as mentioned, keen to have a discussion with her to just hear what are some of the findings been. I know that she's still busy with it. We're really, really keen to see the end result. So so that's definitely what we're going to focus on this evening, a little bit just about the content that I shared. But before we get started, for me, to reduce interruption, let us mute our mics if everybody can mute their microphones. Can I also ask if you have a question? We are looking forward to receiving questions, so please do raise your hand. And then I'll give you the opportunity to ask. We are looking forward to engaging. Again, I want to say emotional intelligence is not something that's new for us. And then feel free to engage the moderator in the chat. I'm very sure that you're going to respond to each other's questions. Mario, I'll give him an opportunity to share some questions if there's something that is addressed to the audience or to myself, to Shana, even maybe somebody in the audience would want to respond. And then please know that this session is recorded. All our sessions are recorded, and a copy of the recording will be sent to you post the event. We've had 5 sessions before this. Our marketing team will be happy to share any of the events that we've had previously with you if you ask. So that to me is all the house rules and the introduction out of the way. I think we're ready to start, ladies and gentlemen. So this activity that I mentioned earlier, I'm going to ask Mario to share with us. According to Dan Goleman's famous research, emotional intelligence skills can be trained. I think that's what we need to remember from here. So I'm handing over to you, Mario, now to conduct the Mentimeter activity with us, and I trust that everybody is going to participate. In life, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes our skills go blunt. I think we like to use the analogy that sometimes we've got to sharpen your axe because your axe goes blunt. And I trust the activity tonight and the tips and tricks that we will be sharing will give you an opportunity to sharpen those tools again and to add it to our toolbox when it comes to leading people. So Mario, thank you. Over to you. I'm going to mute my mic and be excited to participate in your activity.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, Sharon. In the chat, Cassandra has shared a link to our Mentimeter discussion point this evening. If you're not able to access the link in the chat, if I could ask you to open your web browsers, please use the link at the top, www.menti.com, and use the code 37820944. The code is 37820944, and on your web browser, the link www.menti.com. So while I give you a few moments to get yourselves into that space, the whole idea behind VUCA has substantially changed over the last number of years. If we look at the concept of VUCA and we look at the way our organizations have changed over the last 5 years, particularly, we've moved towards exponential organizations. With those exponential organizations, we're also needing to ensure that our people are ready for all of this movement. VUCA has shown us that where we used to be volatile, that volatility is no longer reliable. Where we used to be uncertain post-2020 and with the changes around COVID, there's been a lot of anxiety and our people are anxious. What used to be very complex for us in our organizations is actually now very non-linear, and it's not logical in how we use and access systems anymore. And what used to be very ambiguous for us in the past has actually post-2020 become exceptionally incomprehensible. So with all of those changes that are happening, we know that performance is key, and for our businesses to grow and our people to grow, we need them to perform. But that performance requires us to have some level of emotional intelligence as leaders, and that emotional intelligence that we have as leaders carries over to our staff and our people as well. So already we're starting to see quite a number of comments popping through. Post-2020, with the shift from VUCA to Barney, what are some of the things that we are doing to evolve our EQ? So this whole concept of Barney is actually was created by James Cascio, an American philanthropist, and he's a very strong proponent, and he drives human evolution and the evolution of education and in information and emerging technology. And this shift to Barney is all around us having become more brittle in some instances, us becoming anxious, us now being more non-linear than before, and us also being very incomprehensible. So if we start to actually look at what is coming through, we can see that some of the things that you've done as individuals, there's lots of reading coming through, there's development of empathy in staff, self-directed learning, self-development, understanding that feelings have names and that we use them accordingly, and we're actually using listening coming through. There's a lot of reflection and review coming in as well. So all of those things link very strongly to the concept of Barney. For us to deal with being brittle, we have to learn to become more flexible. We have to become more unbreakable. Us having previously been anxious, we're moving away from feeling helpless to actually starting to find direction in what we do as well. That non-linear consequences that we have to deal with, there's understanding that there are impacts to what happens, and those impacts affect how we actually do things. So some of the other comments coming through there: practice understanding, practicing ways to maintain positive attitudes. There's a nice one there, putting my head in the sand, a negative one, but at the same time, it links to our non-linear thinking, it links to our adaptability, it also links to our resilience in that brittleness that we have. So as we continue, I'm going to leave the screen on for a little bit, but our guest speaker for this evening, Shana, is there anything that resonates with you from what is on Mentimeter at the moment and what you've actually been doing in your research? your microphone, Shana.
Thank you, Mario, for that. Good evening, everybody. I think from my side, I am actually not surprised based on some of the comments that's come through. And you've mentioned quite a bit that is really standing out for me. The word connectedness is really, really important for me here. That whole topic of multitasking. And my favorite word that is really standing out that I'm so passionate about is the word empathy. And my worry is, are we leading with empathy? And that's really where most of my studies is directed in terms of how we lead within the world, the word empathy in the hybrid world of work. So Mario, that is really what I'm excited about in terms of where we're connecting with each other this evening.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Shana. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mario, for doing the activity with us. I'm just going to swap over to my screen and share my slides with you again, and I trust that's okay. But just while we're doing that, I want to say there was 3 things from the Mentimeter that stood out for me. Reading, reading, reading. That is our MD's favorite. She expects us to read all the time. And then my other favorite one is feelings have names. I like that one a lot. And it does. Feelings does have names. I think, again, it goes back to the emotional intelligence quick definition of being self-aware and being socially aware. What are we doing to become socially aware, to understand our people? And then putting your head in the sand. I have many times over these 18 months felt, and I'm sure there's many of you that have felt the same way. Let's be honest. Sometimes you felt you just wanted to put your hand in the sand, your head in the sand. And I think that what is important about that is that knowing how you're going to get your head out of the sand, and that's self-awareness. So thank you, Mauri, for conducting the Mentimeter, and thank you to Shana for connecting with us today. And just based on the discussion, Shana, and again linking back to the importance of empathetic leadership, let me quickly introduce you to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, Shana is currently doing her PhD, which is focused on the hybrid world of work, associated to challenges that leaders and teams are undergoing. She has many years of leadership experience, in fact 15 years of leadership experience. I've known her for quite a while. She's very passionate. She is a passionate ETD practitioner, I'd like to say, and she aims to tap into the emotional intelligence of individuals through this research so that they are equipped to explore their own self-awareness and their social skills. Again, becoming self-aware and becoming socially aware. So Shana, just to follow on from Mario's discussion, I know, like we just said, and you mentioned it, you're very, very passionate about empathetic leadership. And I think your research quite had a huge focus around that. Empathy, we know, is one of the 5 key elements. So firstly, give us some insight into some of your research with regards to the hybrid world of work. Do you want to unmute your mic, Shana?
Here we go. I firstly want to say thank you, Sharon, for inviting me this evening. I think I feel very privileged and humbled for the fact that I was asked to partake, purely because the topic of this discussion is so near to my heart. I have spent literally since the lockdown period, when South Africa went into lockdown, I've literally been focused on the topic, purely because when I started my research, I was very interested to find out more around what has now transpired. We are going through this transition, not as South Africa, but we are going through this transition globally. So from a global perspective, when the World Health Organization on the 11th of March 2020 announced that COVID-19 has now become a global pandemic, I think the whole world went for a big pause in that moment when that announcement was made. And I think everybody started asking all these questions. And then in South Africa, when we finally got COVID-19 at our doorstep, When President Cyril Ramaphosa put us under lockdown from the 27th of March 2020, we all thought it was only going to be for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So organizations weren't really aware that now we need to do a transition from working, sitting in traffic to Cape Town every day for 2 hours, which was my norm, to working from home. Yes, this has been a concept used throughout the world, and in most of the developed countries, they knew what it was to work from home, and they somehow had the infrastructure ready available to them. However, South Africa wasn't ready. Our organizations, our employees, our leaders were not ready. So we went through that transition rapidly, quick, fast, as the COVID-19 went through quick and fast. And I think for me, also when I started seeing that from a statistics perspective, that globally, just in the month of March, 25 million people lost their jobs. And then in South Africa, for the period of up until April, we lost 2.8 million people lost their jobs. And those are then the aspects that triggered me I wanted to understand more. And so organizations then started from working from home. The word hybrid working came a norm now for us. Remote working, those were terms that we never used before. And I found it very interesting that based on that, this transition then had impacted the entire household because we actually moved our entire workplace into the home world, and with no asking, with no prior planning, and it was just instantaneously done. And I think that really sparked my need to understand more in order for me as an ETD practitioner as well, understand how do we now go about bringing employees back into the working environment, obviously slowly, and what those impacts have been from a leadership perspective. So part of my research is really understanding, are we leading with empathy, and are we understanding our employees during these trying times and difficult times, and do we know what they're going through in these times? Also knowing that we as the leaders are basically going through the same, because at the end of the day, we are experiencing the same pandemic. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just based on what you just said, Shana, I think the next question I'm probably going to focus on is asking what are some of those challenges that our leaders are faced with, but also what are some of the challenges or lifestyle changes that our staff need to make. I immediately think of a mother who is working from home, and now with the hybrid world of work, I have had so many people saying that they've got to return to work, but they kids are at home. So that's been the one that's probably the most popular. But that being said, and what we said earlier, we often think of our employees, but as a leader, I'm an employee. And I'm faced with challenges leading my people, but I'm also faced with those very same lifestyle challenges. And what do I have to plan, or what do I have to focus from in order for me to plan to ensure that when I'm leading my people, I'm still doing so with emotional intelligence in this hybrid world. So everything you've said is, I could just nod, because that's where we were thinking 3 weeks we're going to be at home, and it never happened. We went into complete focus just on digital transformation. I mean, we were on a journey of digital transformation 2 years before that, but then our focus was completely on knowing this is probably going to come. I think for me now, as I mentioned earlier, what do you feel, or what has your research shown are some of the challenges that our leaders are faced with currently with the new world of work, the hybrid world of work?
I think, Sharon, when I started, like I said, when I started my research in 2020, literally there were no articles available on this, and me were challenged in the fact that I also was obviously during lockdown. I couldn't physically look and speak to individuals. We were all in a house. But what I found eventually was that and again, this happened instantaneously. Schools closed a week before organizations had to close. I can remember as clear as daylight because I was actually training one of my leadership training courses. within the organization, and there was just this chaos going because they all had to go back to the office because immediately plans with changes were made to move to home immediately within that week. My children were told, you need to leave the university, you need to go home. And so it was so chaotic that moment. I had to take a pause because in that moment, I don't think any of us understood what was going on. Just fast forwarding a bit, so then research articles became more available. So my research is basically not South Africa. I am widespread. I'm doing it from a global perspective. So I'm looking at what are organizations globally doing that has already had hybrid working world of work in place prior to COVID. But South Africa, the term became very new for us because only a small percentage of our people were working from home prior to COVID. So the schools closed at the same time. Domestic workers weren't allowed to obviously interact because we were on total shutdown. Yet organizations that did the remote working, they allowed the employees to continue working, not understanding that now mom is now at home, having to look after children, having to do the housework that maybe she had help with in the past. Grandparents weren't maybe coming over anymore. The word flexibility for me really stands out because it's being used so loosely at the moment. Because the boundaries that we had from maybe a 9 to 5 job, there aren't any boundaries. Leaders expect, or organizations expect the employees to now work overtime. And it is an invisible ink that is written there. So there is no, you have to switch off at 5 o'clock. However, I'm still sending you an email, and in your mind, you're thinking, do I respond? Don't I respond? What happens if I don't respond? Because of the uncertainty of a job and the insecurity of a job in certain sectors, because certain sectors were really, really impacted. And you know, Sharon, I can go on till tomorrow because I'm so passionate about the topic. But I also think these disruptions impacted us all, whether you were the leader or whether you were the employee. We were all in it together. And we are now moving to coming back into the workplace. So the first challenge was you are sitting at home, locked in, and you have to juggle all these responsibilities and added responsibilities, which the fact of isolation is already a topic of how it impacted the mental well-being of employees. Now, the extended work hours was on top of that. And those are the key lifestyle changes that happened instantaneously. Our employees were not used to the digital transformation. We were not ready for that. Working on a computer virtually, connecting with your manager on a virtual session was, people didn't know what MS Teams was. They started hearing about Zoom. We had to learn immediately without help. How do we do this? And I think for me, what really, really stands out is now in the hybrid world of work, how do we juggle that now? Because we are now saying you now need to come back to work, but now you don't have the nanny anymore. Schools are now only maybe operating twice a week. You going in twice a week. How do we balance that? People don't have the commuting that they used to have in the past. So those are all the challenges, Sharon, that we really need to unpack a little bit more. There's also the research, my current research as of 2021 states that the virtual connect sessions that we have with our employees, that whole word of empathy is gone. It has been compromised throughout this time. So those are the lifestyle changes and the behavioral changes that took place throughout the last few months, Sharon.
I agree with you. You know, I might just look at us this evening. And I mean, you know, me, when you and I are on, or when we have our sessions, we have our cameras on. But in some of our meetings, you just see initials. Maybe they must ask the audience to switch on their cameras tonight. I think they should. I think we deserve a wave. I think that everybody can switch on their cameras and we can quickly do a wave. Hello, everybody. There we go. Hey, Jade, okay. Where's the rest of them? I want to encourage you to do this with your team. I think that the empathy is very difficult for us as leaders to put ourselves in our people's shoes when their shoes are at home. Think about it. So the way to see the shoes is by having the camera on. So I'm absolutely in agreement. And we don't even have to have it on for long. Have it on at the start of your session or have it on at the end and or when you have your one-on-ones. Having your camera off when you have your one-on-one, I can't see the interaction. I am expressive to the cuff. Ladies and gentlemen, I've done many personality assessments and I love people. If you watch the video that we showed up front, I'm passionate about people, so I've got to connect with them. I am at the office every day and then I tell them I have to be here because I've got work to do. It's just because I want to connect with people. So I can see some faces that are like, Simone, I can see you. I see you. Thank you very much, everybody. You're welcome to switch off. And I see a little baby. That's life. We've got to have the kids on as well. So I think it shows to our leaders that that's just life. Take the time to connect with your people. Just at the start of our lockdown, I had an opportunity to train a group of architects, and we really delved into connecting with people and the importance of having these type of meetings and what it is that you're still going to do to show interest. I mean, one of the we ran a poll, and one of the focus of that poll, Shana, was self-awareness, and we asked for people to vote on 4 techniques that we can consider when it comes to self-awareness, and the 4 was personality assessment, having a mentor or life coach, journaling, making notes. The one that came out probably the highest was constructive feedback. I'll share the stats later. Was constructive feedback, and for me, I say it's my quote. Feedback is the breakfast of champions, but people feel that those are some of the things that we use to build the important key element of emotional intelligence called self-awareness. So yeah, you spoke about research. I mean, I shared that article with you the other day, and we know that employees are leaving without even knowing where they're going. And I think we spoke about this in terms of where people are, they're used to doing a certain role, and because we have a lot of our head office closed now, we've got our people working in different, having or expected to do different, take on different responsibilities, and that article shows that people are leaving. I'm going to ask Mario to share that link later for people just to read. It was done by Microsoft Corp, if I'm correct, and it was done globally, so it was an international survey. But 41% of staff, if I remember correctly, they leave without having secured other employment. Now, for me, again, it goes back to empathy. It's a huge challenge. I immediately think, what are we doing to connect with our people to even know that this is where they are? I want to know where my people are. I mean, we are a whole team of 3, but we have a big staff on demand pool because I think that's just the way business is going. But I go in and I say to Roshni, I can see that on your face. What's going on? Mario, I can see that on you. What's going on? Because we can connect in that way. So for me to have the camera on and see the face, I like that. But also, it's a way for us to still engage and show empathy so the lack of empathy, that highlighted for me the lack of empathy. So probably my last question to you, I hope you don't mind, I had 3. What are some of the tools that you found leaders can use to lead with empathy during the hybrid world of work? Shana.
Sharon, if I may just go back to the question or your article that you've gone through, because it's very interesting to me. When you've sent it off, and part of my research is around the fact that the unemployment rate is extremely high, and it's been exacerbated during the COVID-19 lockdown, and I held on to your words now in order to just give my input on that and my perspective. So part of my my new world of work is continuously updating myself with the stats that is coming through. So I'm always keen to understand what does the global stats look like in terms of unemployment as well as South Africa. So if I look at South Africa, for the second quarter of 2021, we're sitting on 24%, which is extremely high. Yeah. And then from a global perspective, we're sitting on 6.9%. And I found it very interesting that what you've just mentioned now is that at this moment in time, employees are leaving the organizations voluntarily. And that is a worry because why are they leaving? I'm always interested around the leadership perspective of when we're in crisis, leaders need to show up. And that brings me to the empathetic leadership term that is now being used continuously based on the unprecedented times that we are faced with. So I just thought I'll add that in there, that leaders really need to refocus in terms of why the employees are leaving, because we are losing skills. South Africa is one of the countries, actually we were number one announced last year that we are the number one country with the highest untapped skills that is being not utilized. Yet our people are leaving. So they're leaving with that skill, they're leaving with the experience, and they're leaving with knowledge. And actually the investment that you put into them in terms of training them over a period of time. So I think that's a little bit of food for thought.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just thought I'll add that.
You know, immediately when you mention empathetic, I think of ethical. I think in our previous session was about ethical leadership. The two goes hand in hand. Empathetic leadership and ethical leadership. Ethics has also become big. I think in our workplaces when it comes to leading people with emotional intelligence. So yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. I think we are not investing enough time to spend with our teams because suddenly we're hopping from meeting to meeting to meeting. I sometimes ask myself, and we train this, do I have to be in this meeting? What value am I adding to the meeting, or is it that I could add value somewhere else, like having a one-on-one with one of my staff members and to connect and hear how they're doing. But I do think that we suddenly find ourselves doing that. And the other thing that was also in that article, and I think I wanted to share it later, but maybe it's a good time to share here. And you mentioned it, and that's why I want to share it here, is suddenly we're working outside of our hours. I'm guilty. I am so guilty. When I read that, I thought, oh my word, I ping before 7 o'clock, and I ping after 7 o'clock, and I ping over the weekends because I'm thinking that that's a way that I can connect with my team, but that's their time. It's their family time. Are we suddenly feeling that we have the carte blanche to do that as leaders because we don't see our staff on site, or they're working in this hybrid world of work? Yes, I agree that they have the flexibility. They can do a load of washing. They can, I love that the most of lockdown, do the load of washing, start cooking, go and fetch your kids, go to work. There should still be an element of respect for me. So when I read that, I'm guilty. My team knows I'm guilty about that. And so, yeah, I'm going to try to avoid it. I will, because I think as leaders, we need to know where to draw the line. So, Shana, before you leave, Mario, I want you to check. Are there any questions in the chat that you think any one of us can answer, or maybe even anyone in the audience? Anything that you would like to share from the chat?
So, Sharon, not so much anything being shared in terms of questions, but there's quite a number of nice comments coming through. Lisa's been quite vocal in the chat this evening. She shares a huge impact on individuals. Home and work is now an integrated blend. People have to adapt. There is no choice. I think COVID has shown us that to a great deal as well. Cassandra shared one of the biggest challenges, especially for leaders, was how to transition the in-person environment to operate remotely and still unlock performance outputs from teams working at home. She also shared that lines are very blurred. And if we think about the way that things are working in Europe particularly, France was a forerunner in legislating hours of work and a clear cutoff between differentiating what is acceptable for work contact and what is acceptable outside of work times. So I think that it's a lot around the ambiguity of work and home. There's the challenges around staff members having lost staff family members. So there's that element of grief, and there's that element of detachment from being with those that you actually love and need to be with. Lisa also shared there that leaders need tools and guidance with regard to how to manage their workforces.
Yeah.
It's not just around policy and framework. It
Yes.
needs to ensure that the models are adaptable and flexible. Again, very strongly linking to that Barney adaptability and the resilience as well. So it's around ensuring that our people are actually developed as well. And then the articles there around who's driving the resignation and some more insight around people understanding that there should be a clear differentiation between what is home and what is work, and also that respect of time and allowing people to be with their families as well.
There was a last comment that popped up, Mario, and I know Kaz commented on that now. I can't see the chat box. I
There's a
think it's from
comment
Jag.
that's from Jag. It says there, perhaps people have realized their place of work or leadership does not satisfy their purpose. And I think that that is a very important thing to consider when you look at that brittle environment that we know, or where we used to have logic, we used to have control. We no longer have that because of the shift in the post 2020 world.
I'm
And I
so
think
loving that. Yeah. Sorry, Maria. I'm loving that.
with the levels of transparency as well. Even if we look at the medical research and the medical development around vaccines, it would not have been possible in the VUCA world as much as it is now. We've moved away from non-linear. There's a lot more transparency. There's a lot more accountability. And I think that's one of the strongest things when it comes to leaders as well, being accountable for the people that they work with, but also allowing their people to be accountable for their own actions and their own activity as well.
Absolutely. I saw your spot on, Jake. You know, I sit here and I made a comment the other day. Suddenly we have found some of the untapped skills, and I think Shana mentioned it also. Suddenly we have found with the hybrid world of work that we now have the opportunity to connect with our team and see what they actually what other potential they have. And we're going to show a video a little bit later that speaks to purpose, potential, and perspective. And understanding our staff and knowing what is the avenue that we need to guide them in, because maybe where they were currently before lockdown is not where their passion lies any longer. We've gone from classroom training to a lot of online training, a lot of blended training, and I now see people shine a lot more. And so I'm spot on. I'm in so in agreement with that. It's giving people an opportunity to tap on something that they would not have had an opportunity to do if this didn't happen. So there's been a lot of learning and a lot of appreciation from lockdown. I mean, the time at home, sometimes I think, I wish it was lockdown and I could stay in my PJs. I'm sure a lot of people feel like that. So there's been a lot of learning, a lot of appreciation, family. I think now that we're back into the work culture, it's just for us to step into that space again and say, as leaders, what is it that I need to do with each unique person in my team to ensure that I'm showing empathy, that I'm leading the emotional intelligent way, and I'm tapping on their skill, having an opportunity to go back to the CV and understand. I often say, go back to your staff CVs. You do not know what it is that they have studied, or even ask them to update it, because you have no idea what they've learned over the years outside of the work environment. So Shana, thank you, Mario, for sharing the chat. Thank you for joining us this evening and sharing your passion around leading with empathy in the hybrid world of work. We wish you well with your PhD. The next time we chat to you, will be a doctor, I know, and you're going to charge Omni a lot of money. So I'm going to keep you close to my side. And maybe I'll get 50% discount.
Thank you, Sharon, for just giving me the platform to share. And I think, this is just one conversation of many. And so thank you for inviting me this evening.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure and an honor having you, hosting you as part of the EQ open source training. So on our next slide, I just want to reflect on the 5 key elements of EQ, and there's so much I want to say, but if we've got 18 minutes left, I can't believe it, and I say to them that hour must go quickly. I'm so nervous, and now it's gone too quickly. So my first thing I want to share here is that a quote by Henry Ford, and he said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So according to this quote by Henry Ford, he says, your belief in yourself is a determining factor in your success. So just let's for a few minutes reflect on the slide, and at the first with the 5 key elements. The first one being self-awareness. That's our ability to recognize and understand our own emotions. I mean, our self-assurance in trusting our abilities and our capabilities. So we know the benefit of self-awareness for us as a leader. We know it helps us to be conscious of our behavior and the impact that it has on others, especially the people that we lead. For me, a self-awareness leader is somebody that we know shows empathy, that is humble, they're observant, they're responsive. They know when to use discernment, they're adaptable, they're agile. We live in a world where we work on staff and demand models, so they've got to be agile in their thinking. We're leading different generations. Oh my golly. You can't have a cookie cut approach. We're leading different ages. We're leading different people. We're leading different energies and different. If you look at personality assessment, those are so important things that we need to remember, that we need to be aware of. And when I'm self-aware, I'm going to know how to be socially aware. And the second key element is self-regulation, my favorite one. It's the one where you put your hand on your chest and you know that your behavior is for you to control. Okay, it's controlling one's behavior, emotions, and thoughts. I've just got a few things that I want to share here in terms of us for tips and tricks. I've shared already. One of my favorite things I think I have is putting my hand on asking people to put their hand on their chest and remembering that their behavior is theirs and they choose what they want to do with that behavior. Always remain aware of your feelings. Pay attention to yourself. Listen to yourself talk. I have conflict with myself all the time. So listen to myself to know what it is that I think I need to do differently, because that's self-awareness. For me, create a list of situations that's going to trigger me, and what is the negative emotions that's going to accompany that. Think about ways that I dealt with it previously that was a positive outcome, and so that I can use it again. We're human, we do these things all the time. One of my favorite things to share with people is our choices determines the destination of where we're going. Remember, you always have a choice. You have the ability to choose your response to any situation. Integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. What you say you're going to do. It's a confidence builder. It builds trust. Do the right thing even when nobody's looking. It builds a person's willingness to keep commitment. And as I said, it builds trust. It builds relationship. It fosters positive relationship for me. The third one that they speak about here is motivation. I mean, I cannot motivate other people. I can inspire, I can encourage, I can influence, I can guide, I can coach. I can take them to the water. They've got to drink themselves. They've got to become self-motivated. And then, of course, social skills. I am the social butterfly. I love people. I said it already. So it's important for me when I connect with people to remember that everybody is different. So social skills is the ability to handle and influence people, your team, your family, emotions effectively. And I think once we understand ourselves, it's easier for us to understand others. And so ladies and gentlemen, those are the 5 elements or key elements when it comes to empathy. And I think for me, when it comes to for leaders, and I want to go back to that activity that we always do at the end of training, or the stop, start, and continue. Leaders with high emotional intelligence, they outperform others. It is what it is. It's the basics. In 2015, from the World Economic Forum, researchers showed that in 5 years, they say that the top that emotional intelligence, or in 5 years, emotional intelligence moved to being number 6 ranked on the top 10 skills. And I want to say now, there's new research, it's probably in the top 3. Leaders with emotional intelligence, they will meet your bottom line. They build relationships. Happy people create customers. Okay? They drive performance. They are good at decision making. They introduce measures to ensure good decision making. They build high performance teams. The value of emotional intelligence to build a high performance team for me is so important. They influence, they inspire, they encourage their staff to have faith and trust in their own abilities, and they believe that they can do whatever they set their minds to do. Self-confidence is such an important predictor when it comes to success. It leads to them putting a value on themselves, and for me, that is self-esteem. That's the highest that we want to achieve. So for me, just leaders with EQ, ladies and gentlemen, they get to know their staff. Take time to know your staff. Know what moves them, what drives them, and what ticks them. They create opportunities for staff members to get to know each other. We're back at work now. I'm looking forward to our end of year outing or end of year function. We have a rendezvous at work where we have every second Monday you connect with someone else. And at the beginning I thought, who wants to do this at 8 o'clock? My word, these people that I've been working with for so long that I now hear things about. I mean, I had mine with one of my colleagues. She never knew my son was so interested in fish until I told her that day. And I've known her for many years. So I think we always have an opportunity to learn about others. So create those opportunities so that it's easy for us to empathize. The more you know about other people, the more you know how to empathize. So create those moments. We don't have to not do it because we're not at the office. They communicate clearly and respectively or respectfully. Leaders with high EQ are so good when it comes to communication. They give their time or they give their teams an opportunity to be part of decision making. I often say when I train, make your team feel that they had a say in the decision that you had to make. The way you speak it makes them feel that they were part of it. Create moments for collaboration. Leaders with high EQ allow for an environment where staff feel they can speak their mind without being judged or punished or rebuked. They encourage an environment of sharing feedback so that members get to know each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses. They show interest in their team, they pay attention to the emotional state and also their mindset. It's like I said earlier, I can see on your face when something is not right. My personality is going to ask you. I think it's important to know the other person's personality. Do they want me to ask him or do they want me to walk away and give them some time to just focus? And then, of course, they encourage transparency in communication. For me, ladies and gentlemen, leaders that lead with EQ invest in their people. They see employee development as imperative and they build a talent pool. They allow for curiosity and for innovation. We sit at Omni with a pool of individuals that were interns. Oh my word. It was amazing to see how they flourish and how they've grown. It is a privilege to know them and the value that they're adding to our brand just now because we're in this world of digital transformation and just transferring to e-learning. I will never know what they do. We surround ourselves with people that do things better than us. That is our MD's motto. Surround yourself with people that do things better than us. And we've had so many opportunities to create that for people within the Omni field. So leaders build high performance. Leaders also lead people, and I think that's not going to change. Whether we're in 2030 or whether we're in 2040. I won't be around at Omni, I will be long retired. I want to say that there's so much talk about digital transformation, there's so much talk about 4IR. I think what is important for us to know, there will always be somebody behind to work it. People will always have to work. And when they work it, leaders will always have to lead. So just some tips to get you started on this journey. I wrote a quote there and it says, remember, you can't touch it or hear it, but you know it when you see it. Emotional intelligence is that soft skill that is hard to measure, but easy to see. Be assertive, stay calm, compromise during conflict. Empathize, empathize, empathize. Be approachable and sociable. Be open to feedback. And a final few tips, guys. Remember, when we lead generation gaps. So you've got to understand generations. Our next EQ session, we need to focus on this. I'm just saying if we have another one, we've got to know how do we lead different generations. Their needs and their expectations are completely different. I'd love to do some research on how they're coping with the hybrid world of work. Create team boundaries and rules. You know what, when we talk about the stages of a team of forming, storming, norming and performing, it's so important when you lead a new team for the first time that you need to understand their expectations, or they need to understand what you expect from them, and also the other way around. Suddenly in the hybrid world of work, we should go back to that because we're now forming again. Or we're working on staff on demand models. Suddenly we have a new member moving into our team. What are we doing to ensure that that person adapts to the team so that we can work towards norming and performing? So being in the hybrid world of work really expects us to go back to those basics to be able to ensure that our teams are working towards a common goal. Okay, and then lastly for me, we're sharing a link in the chat, Maria. I would like you to share this, and it's just linked to what I said earlier. And just for me, a pause was that when my boss thinks that he can contact me or ping me before work and afterwards. So that's also to my boss. I'm just putting it out there. I think it's become a luxury for us to think that our staff is available all the time, and that's not necessarily the case. So ladies and gentlemen, for those who know me, I'm very passionate about talking, just as well. Kazim only gave me an hour. I put the heart on this slide. Emotional intelligence requires us to lead with the heart. Our focus, as we said, is completely 4IR and digital transformation now. And as I said earlier, people will always lead people. We all know that knowledge and skills required for future jobs are so different. But ultimately, people will still need to work. I don't believe any of us online here tonight, or maybe no, Simona, I saw you online. You're definitely going to be a leader in 2030, 2040. I saw some very young faces online. They're possibly going to be the leaders in 2040. But our aim at Omni, and I think our aim for organizations, is to start building that legacy. Okay, making sure that our current junior managers and our bubbling unders are identified to lead your organization's culture into the future. Our intent with these sessions is to just create or to build a community of experts where we can create teachable moments. Our next future sessions, I'm hoping that we will have organizations get their bubbling unders, their junior managers, their first line managers to join these sessions so that we can help them to become future fit. I'm very excited about that because we're working across industries, and I'm so excited that you're going to meet the rest of the Omni family when it comes to the sessions that we're going to run in 2020. So for me, our focus is completely on Workforce 2030 leaders, and that is why these sessions are here. And so ultimately for me, also for Omni, these sessions are about making a difference in the communities we serve. So yeah, please encourage you to get, invite your future leaders to join our sessions. Let's build that community of experts where we can provide them with teachable moments as to how to lead the future world of work. And I think they're going to need it. They're going to need to know the empathy way. They're going to need to know the self-awareness way. They're going to need to know the self-regulation way. They're going to need to know the motivation. They're going to need to know that you can only be, if you're self-aware, you can be socially aware. So we're almost at the end of this. Ladies and gentlemen, so we trust that the session added a lot of value to you. So much to share about emotional intelligence. I hope that we do really have a session too. Just before we end with Mario, I'm going to ask you, is there anything in the chat that you are wanting to share, or that are there any questions that you would like to pose to myself or Shana or anybody else in the audience? And then I'll leave that slide on where to from here on the screen.
Okay, so again, there's not much in terms of questions, but there's definitely lots of very positive insights and information coming through. So Farouz shared earlier that this whole session has been so informative, and one of the things that stood out for her is that many of us had to reinvent ourselves so that we could actually remain current and relevant post 2020. The world that we know changed, and we had to make sure that we changed with it. Carl shared there, really insightful, lots of skill that leaders really need to have, especially when dealing with various generation X or Y or Z. Thanks again for sharing. Lisa shared that empathy and well-being drives psychological safety. Natasha shared influence and inspire. Leaders with EQ understand what a privilege it is to build and shape the performances of tomorrow. There's a few more articles that have come through. Anna shared, thank you very much for today's session. Natasha again, bye Natasha, load shedding happened. From M. Smith, thank you Sharon and Omni, session has been insightful and impactful. Appreciate the value creation and all the shares that help build an authentic self. Yes, I think that wraps up more or less what is in there. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Shana, for engaging. It's been fun being part of this session this evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mario. And thank you to you, Shana. And once again, we wish you well. Just before we end, I just in closing would love to show a short 3-minute video. So if you don't have load shedding yet, stay on. Very impactful, very catchy. The Omni management team had a human capital strategy session on Saturday, and Lisa shared the video with us, and I thought it's so fitting to end our session with that. We will stay connected afterwards. So if you want to engage with us, you're welcome to. So I'm going to hand over quickly to Jade, who's going to play that video for us. And thank you once again, everybody, for joining.
COVID-19 proved that organizations and workers are capable of tremendous resilience under pressure. They can adapt. They can pivot. They can survive. But in a world of constant disruption, survival is not enough. It's time for organizations to shift their focus from point-in-time responses to solutions that are dynamic and evolving, from planning and solving for what is known to thriving in a future that is unknown. How? It starts by becoming and remaining distinctly human. Now more than ever, it is about embracing 3 attributes to humanize work and create lasting value for workers, organizations, and society at large. Purpose, potential, and perspective. Purpose is the North Star in a world disrupted. This common set of values doesn't depend on circumstances, so it allows organizations to sift through competing priorities, unite workers under common goals, drive belonging and well-being, and focus energy and resources on the most pressing needs. Potential demands that organizations look more dynamically at and capitalize on what their people are capable of, to look beyond static role descriptions, to get the right people in the right place at the right time, regardless of where they sit on an org chart or what organization they are part of. By trusting workers to bring creativity and initiative to their jobs, workers can prepare themselves for a longer career life, and organizations can realize a new level of productivity in an environment of continued disruption. Perspective challenges organizations to act boldly in the face of uncertainty, to focus on outcomes instead of outputs, to re-architect work around human strengths and capabilities aligned with the way humans think and engage, and designed to embed the behaviors that will advance organizations into the new world of work. By re-architecting work, organizations can use disruption as a launching pad to imagine new possibilities and opportunities. The past year has been challenging, and the lessons we've learned have been hard-won. But these lessons in purpose, potential, and perspective can help us leapfrog to a new world, a world where we're not simply surviving, but thriving.
Thank you, Jade, for playing the video. I think you're going to stop now. If there's anybody else that would still like to engage, you're welcome to ask us some questions now. I think that, what stood out for me is the 3 Ps. And then just being humanistic. And then as emotionally intelligent leaders, to put our people first. Remember, we will continue to lead people. Any other questions? If none, then ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining our sessions. Or must I give an opportunity if anybody wants to ask? We look forward to you joining us next month. It's always the last Wednesday of the month. I have no idea what is the next session. I was too nervous to prepare this one. So, we're looking forward to having you register for the next session, ladies and gentlemen. Have a lovely evening and stay safe.